In the year of our Lord 1720, New York was a burgeoning colony teeming with ambition, yet shadowed by the specter of illness. The streets were only just beginning to pulsate with the rhythm of trade, with wooden carts creaking under the weight of goods and voices mingling in a cacophony of accents and laughter. However, beneath the vibrant surface lay the grim reality of disease, a lurking threat that could rend through a community like a cold wind slicing across the harbor. Amongst the tightly knit rows of brick and timber, there thrived a man named Dr. Samuel Hawthorne. His presence commanded attention. Tall and lean, with unruly dark hair and an air of intensity that led some to deem him eccentric, he held a reputation that oscillated between admiration and despair. Respected for his knowledge of herbs and treated remedies, Dr. Hawthorne's name was both celebrated and whispered in fearful tones. His practice, a modest establishment adorned with shelves crowded by jars of roots and tinctures, radiated a pungent mixture of lavender and something more acrid. Each day, townsfolk would line up, desperate for his healing touch, particularly as milder fevers began to sweep through the population like wildfire, leaving many bedridden and frail. "Yes, yes, the fever grows legions," the locals murmured in hushed voices, eyeing the doctor's abode as if it were a source of both solace and dread. But the true question remains, what of the snake? It was a serpent, or rather serpents, that had stirred whispers. Occasional tales of fever cures involving snake venom seeped into everyday conversation, spoken of in reverent undertones. Peddlers and sailors romanticized the idea, claiming the vibrant tinctures of serpentine origin could draw out fevers with an alchemical precision. When pressed, many would hastily add, "But have you seen their effects?" It was said that Dr. Hawthorne was experimenting with controversial concoctions, stirring these dangerously potent essences into his remedies. The doctor prided himself on his empirical knowledge gathered from travels beyond the seas, armed with an insatiable curiosity for remedies that others dismissed as sheer folly. As the fever ravaged siblings and children, families turned eyes of desperation toward him. On one particularly dreary evening, a frightened mother named Ellen entered his practice, carrying her fever-stricken son Matthew, who lay limp in her arms. "If you don't help, doctor, I fear he shall slip away," she implored, fear lacing her voice. Dr. Hawthorne studied the boy with the gaze of a man more conversant with death than life, the air thick with anticipation. "Fear not, good woman, I shall do what I must," he replied, his voice steady but haunted by an unworldly fervor of conviction. With a grim resolve, he drew forth a vial containing the darkly gleaming extract of snake venom, his secret ingredient. It glistened in the candlelight, a viscous fluid that whispered of both promise and peril. "This," he declared, "will draw forth the fever and purify the blood." In that moment, Ellen's heart fluttered between hope and doubt, caught in a tempest of possibility. Would this cure her son's ailing spirit, or would she witness a descent into shadows? As the doctor prepared the venom, drumming fingers against the countertop, an unsettling anticipation enveloped the room, the cutting sensation of mortality teetering on the edge of a blade. For weeks, word spread rapidly through the cobblestone streets like wildfire fueled by urgent whispers. "Hawthorne's methods," they gasped. "He has found the cure." The desperation that had once gripped the townsfolk announced itself through fervent worship of the doctor and his unorthodox practices. It wasn't long before patients flocked to his door, seeking solace in what had been spoken of beneath dimly lit tavern ceilings. Suffering families flooded into his office, sick children drained of color, fevered bodies brought forth like offerings to a strange altar. Each time the same ritual unfolded, the liquid snake venom drawn from its fragile glass prison and placed before anxious eyes, the wooden table between the doctor and his subjects standing as a grim boundary. Among the visits, Thomas, a once lively boy now frail and pale, was brought in. His mother, with worry carved upon her brow, placed him delicately upon the straw-stuffed cot in the corner. As the doctor approached, his eyes darkened. He scanned the child's body, adjusting the spectacles resting on his pointed nose. "The fever has laid waste to your son, but I possess the means to restore him." With trembling hands, Ellen stood alongside Thomas, mother fear-laced with an odd flicker of faith. Would this unknown elixir prove to be salvation or condemnation? The tremble of hope hung thick in the air as the doctor summoned forth the serpent potion. "Oh, Venom," he whispered to himself, a strange incantation mingling with the swaying shadows cast by flickering candles. The liquid poured forth, darker than ink, and met the small, unyielding lips of the frightened boy. Faces drawn tight with tension seemed to wait as minutes bled into eternity. But as hours crept forth, a palpable shift began to suffuse the room. The fever did not relinquish its hold, and as the sun dipped below the horizon, twistings of anguish and despair spiraled into frantic cries. The children with pliant bodies either grew silent and still or erupted into scenes of chaotic dread, a procession of young ones swept up in the disarray. "I did all I could," Dr. Hawthorne muttered as the winter's chill crawled beneath the door. The light in his eyes dimmed with each casualty reported in hushed tones. Faces that once radiated hope were now drawn into shadows of horror. Desperate parents glanced at one another, eyes wide and searching, wondering whom they could trust. As weeks turned into months, the fever continued to grip the town, leaving behind a trail of sorrow and disillusionment. Children who could have thrived began to drift into the dark, their laughter extinguished, along with their innocent delight. A doctor once revered became a figure of despair. They now uttered his name with disdain. "Samuel Hawthorne," they cursed, "the man who brings death cloaked in mystery." A growing unease slithered through the streets of New York, tightening its grip around the hearts of the citizens. Once unshakable faith in their beloved doctor had begun to crumble, replaced by a palpable tension that settled densely over warm summer evenings. As the death toll rose, whispered accusations transformed into tangible anger. Town meetings convened with voices shaking like the trembling leaves outside. A council was formed, the elders' brows furrowed deep with concern, grappling with the torment that had descended like a looming storm cloud. "We must hold Hawthorne accountable," a voice rang out, raw and potent. "His cursed remedies have cost us the lives of our children, our families grieve under the weight of his choices." Among the gathered masses stood Ellen, clutching her son Matthew's faded blanket, once a source of comfort, now a symbol of loss, a tether to a fleeting past. "He said it was for their own good," she cried, caught in a whirlwind of grief and outrage. "We trusted him with their lives." Dr. Hawthorne had isolated himself, retreating behind the protective walls he had crafted through knowledge and arrogance. As his sanity tangled with the web of collective blame, he began to devise excuses, telling himself that the venom was both a solution and a curse, concocted for the greater good. Still, curses find ways to unravel in quiet moments, revealing the truth of a tortured conscience. While the townspeople deliberated and clamored for justice, a small group emerged, a band of mothers, family members, and health workers who sought to uncover the reality that had masked itself behind twisted alchemy. They gathered evidence of Dr. Hawthorne's controversial methods, tracing back the origins of the snake venom, its history burdened by shadows steeped in fatality. In darkened rooms, they huddled over pages of records and testimonies, knitting threads of despair together. They uncovered stories of children who had succumbed to more than just fever. There emerged a truth darker than anyone had anticipated. The very act of administering snake venom introduced a new wave of suffering. Some children would remain unfathomably altered, their bodies not merely engaging in fever but consumed by it. As the tide of evidence gathered, the courage of a few became a ripple, sweeping through the colony and culminating in a crescendo of mutual strength. The movement found traction, morphing from quiet whispers to pounding protests at the doctor's door, demanding justice for a wound plaguing their community. Amidst the uproar, the town's leaders summoned Dr. Hawthorne for a reckoning, and within the confines of a candlelit chamber, the law stood poised against him. "You claim to be a savior, yet your hand wields a harbinger of death," the chosen elder spoke, a deep frown mapping his features. Ellen, exhausted but resolute, stepped forth, joining voices with the grieving assembly. "We entrusted you, Hawthorne. You played God at the cost of our children's lives." Caught between scorn and obligation, Dr. Hawthorne looked upon the assembly, the realization of his actions pressing painfully into his conscience. I sought to save them," he stammered, but the words fell flat against the heavy silence. As the dust settled over the fractured community of New York, the fallout of the fever that had ravaged homes bore haunting remnants. Laments floated through the air like mournful winds, echoing against the crumbling structures that had once served as foundations of faith and integrity. Dr. Hawthorne's reputation had weathered irreparable damage, sealing his fate as a figure both loathed and pitied. Faced with the truth of his actions, he faded from the shadows. Once celebrated, he now wandered the streets alone and isolated, a shell of the man he had been. Town elders had stripped him of his practice, yet the stain of his choices lingered like a bitter taste in the mouths of the grieving. In the aftermath of trials and accusations, a memorial was erected, an open garden space wrought with ivy-covered stone and wooden benches that bore names of the lost children. Those who passed would find solace among the flowers that bloomed solemnly, gnarled roots a testament to lives intertwined, even in tragedy. The resolution of the townsfolk to change began with bows of head and whispered promises. Laws surrounding medicine and practice were tightened, creating a bulwark against future misdeeds. Yet changing the hearts and memories of those affected took longer, a quest filled with pain and remembrance. Ellen stood quietly one evening in the garden, Matthew's blanket clasped tightly in her hands. "We shall never forget," she whispered to the gentle breeze, her heart heavy yet resolved. "Their light shall forever embrace us, their laughter shall never dim." In the years that followed, stories of the curse of the doctor were shared among generations, a cautionary tale woven into the very fabric of New York's history. Though life eventually flourished again amidst the cobblestones, filled with laughter, ambition, and spirit, the echoes of those lost lingered, imploring never to surrender trust to untested remedies cloaked in charisma. And so we remember not just the fever that roamed freely, but the children whose light was extinguished too soon, ensuring that histories unfurl not merely as tales but as living memories imprinted upon our very beings. Years faded like autumn leaves carried by the wind, yet the tale of Dr. Samuel Hawthorne haunted the corners of New York and lingered in the hearts of its inhabitants. The Memorial Garden, where laughter once thrived among blooming flowers, had matured into an echo chamber from which stories of caution reverberated through the generations. Each whisper of the children lost, and each reminder of Hawthorne's misdeeds became intertwined with the burgeoning sense of collective vigilance within the community. New faces arrived, drawn by opportunity rather than the lingering specter of disease, unaware of the dark tapestry woven into the town's history. As adults reminisced and recounted the fever and its devastation, young children overheard fragments of conversations, the hushed tones, the profound pauses, building a bridge between the present and a past shaded by tragedy. One crisp autumn day, young Charles, a boy of 10 unblighted years, wandered into the garden with a curious heart. His eyes gleamed with mischief as he approached an old, gnarled tree. Beneath its branches, he envisioned adventures spanning worlds untold, but as he began to climb, a voice called out from behind him. "No, you must!" Ellen, now a woman softened by the years yet firm in her resolve, stepped forward. Her presence bore the weight of loss but carried a strength that drew the children's attention. "The roots run deep, dear boy, there are stories here, stories that should never be forgotten." Charles paused, curiosity piquing as he turned to her, the trunk serving as a barrier to their worlds. "What stories?" he inquired, his youthful innocence betraying an unfiltered desire to know, an echo of countless children who were encouraged to understand the shadows cast by their past. Ellen knelt beside him, the cool grass brushing against her knees. This was a place of sadness, a place where many were lost to a fever, a doctor who chose the untested over understanding. Her voice trembled slightly, caught between memories of despair and the determination to impart wisdom. The boy listened intently as she wove the tale of innocence stolen, her voice painting vivid portraits of joy turned to grief. She spoke of Matthew, his laughter once bright and unchained, and of the deep scars left on the community when Hawthorne's presence transformed from savior to harbinger. "Did he ever apologize?" Charles asked, a furrow forming between his brows as he grappled with the weight of injustice. Ellen's gaze drifted toward the distant horizon where the sun dipped low in a golden glow. "I do not believe he ever did. Some actions cannot be undone, child, but we can strive to ensure they are never repeated." In that moment, the boy's eyes widened with an understanding newly formed. He realized that history bore the duty of remembrance. Together, they stood, a bridge between generations where the legacy of loss could be transformed into a beacon illuminating the path forward. As days turned into weeks, a movement ignited within the hearts of the residents, spurred by young Charles's relentless curiosity and Ellen's repository of wisdom. They transformed the Memorial Garden into a learning hub, a sanctuary amid an uncertain world. It became not just a space for reflection but a blooming center of education where stories and histories entwined, masked no longer by hushed tones but shared with candor and courage. Local historians, physicians, and educators joined forces, committed to chronicling the lived experiences of those who endured. The garden now thrived as a place where children could hear tales of impermanence threaded with resilience, and where lessons passed down through generations transformed clinical methodologies into heartfelt practices. "We can teach them," Ellen urged, standing beneath the sprawling branches of the old tree during gatherings, "that knowledge must be pursued with humility, that trust should never be placed in darkness." With every lesson imparted, every story shared, the echoes of the past began to fade, transformed into hopeful murmurs woven into the fabric of the community. The negative legacy of Hawthorne was extracted and reframed, allowing a space for healing amidst remembering. As years waned and seasons turned, the legacy of Dr. Hawthorne became but a whisper veiled in history. Yet the resilience of the community bloomed like flowers each spring, underscoring the vital importance of advocacy and responsibility in safeguarding the innocent. One particularly vibrant day in early September, the townsfolk gathered to celebrate the culmination of all they had built, an annual ceremony of remembrance designed to honor the lives once lost. Tall banners adorned with names fluttered gently in the breeze, each inscribed in elegant ink, a solemn tapestry of faces, stories, and dreams extinguished too soon. Ellen stood at the forefront, the sun warming her weathered features as she grasped the golden key representing the power of knowledge and change in her hands. Children, once lost in shadows, gathered around her, eager and bright-eyed, shoulders squared as they stood tall, reflecting the resilience of those who had come before them. With each name read aloud, silence engulfed the crowd, punctuated only by soft murmurs of remembrance. "Matthew," Ellen intoned, the syllables heavy with unspoken love. A small stone marked with his name was placed gently into the soil of the memorial garden as the boy Charles stepped forward, holding a delicate wreath of flowers. As he lowered the tribute, he allowed his gaze to wander across the audience, meeting eyes that echoed countless stories of forgotten child faces. "We remember," he added quietly, "not only the hurt they endured but the joy they brought us." The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the gathering as laughter and tears married in the air, a promise, a bond, an oath taken together. As children ran freely, fear now displaced by hope, the solemnity of the ceremony transformed into a jubilant celebration of life, of love, and of strength. In the years to come, the ceremony of remembrance would become a beloved fixture, a touchstone of the town's spirit. Missives to future generations would ask them to walk the fine line between knowledge and trust, to deep-root their understanding amid light and shadows. Through heartfelt expressions, they ensured a new chapter unfurled, one that accentuated healing through accountability, resilience through compassion, and vigilance in a world still teeming with uncertainty. And so, as the evening settled upon the jubilant assembly, the shared laughter of many without fear crescendoed into a symphony of voices, each bringing forth a new melody, that of a community poised to embrace the future, in collective remembrance and charge toward the unknown, echoing the resolve that no child would be lost again to silence, to suffering, or to inexplicable darkness. As the years continued their steady march, the annual ceremony of remembrance evolved into a cornerstone of community life, a symbol of resilience interwoven with the very essence of Cherrywood Springs. The once shadowed garden blossomed into a sanctuary, replete with vibrant flora and pathways echoing laughter. Stories of the past reframed themselves as lessons of precaution and hope, whispered among the rustling leaves. Under the guidance of Ellen and young Charles, now a spirited voice within the group, the town began an initiative focused on children's health and education. They established the Hawthorne Society, dedicated to ensuring that all medical practices adhered to ethical standards, ensuring that the memories of those lost would serve as precursors to a better future. Each month, workshops were held in the garden, where townsfolk gathered for discussions on healing, holistic practices, and the importance of questioning. Health practitioners from nearby regions visited to share their methodologies, each tale infused with the wisdom of experience and the heartbeat of accountability. In the midst of these advancements, whispers of the past remained, the repercussions of Hawthorne's actions still resonated. People started asking deeper questions: how had he gained their trust? What might have been done to recognize the signs of danger earlier? Such inquiries birthed a collective consciousness, a call for vigilance both personally and among neighbors. Ellen, now a respected elder within the community, brought forth the truth behind their diligent work. "To remember is to carry their spirit with us always. Our learned lessons must prevent history from repeating itself." In the evenings, parents and children would gather on the sturdy benches those evenings, sipping herbal teas that had become a romanticized and less toxic offering than the past's dangerous remedies. Tales spun over leaves and blossoms featured not merely losses, but also joy, the lives saved through responsible care and unity. One day, as Charles strolled through the garden, he stumbled upon a small group of children gathered near a peculiar stone, a remnant from the days of their shadows. Carved elegantly into the surface were the names of those lost, a hum quietly reverberating between them. "What does this mean?" a young girl asked, her head tilting as she examined the stone's surface. "It means we remember them," Charles replied, kneeling to meet her gaze, "and that we ensure no one else has to endure what they did. Our job is to learn from this." Emboldened by his words, the children gathered around him, absorbing the message like roots intertwining beneath the earth. They began sharing their own stories of the garden, how they played, how it became a source of comfort and refuge, and how every bloom symbolized resilience, emergence from pain. As the months rolled on, the town flourished with newfound vitality. Eleanor had noticed an uptick in community engagement, children attending educational workshops, parents flocking in support of health initiatives, and neighboring settlements reaching out for collaboration. The Hawthorne Society held a community festival each fall, inviting neighboring towns to partake in the collective spirit. Activities were woven seamlessly with themes of health education, laughter echoing among dance, gratitude for life mingling with remembrance for those who had left too soon. At one such festival, the air was thick with the scents of baked goods and fresh herbs, while laughter echoed like music through the garden. The excitement crescendoed in the afternoon's sun, dappled through the colorful decorations adorning their gathering space. Ellen stood before a small crowd, her heart aglow against the background of vibrant laughter. "Today we celebrate our strength," she proclaimed, concealing a smile. "Our laughter must echo the spirit of those we lost and forge a future where every child thrives in the safety of our love and care." In that moment, she felt the impact of their work all around her, children darting like fireflies through the open grass, parents chatting, laughter intertwined as a celebration of the lives and futures before them. Years passed, turning childhood dreams into adult realities, but the lessons of Cherrywood Springs never faded. The legacy of the Hawthorne Society transformed its landscape, extending even beyond the borders of their town. Neighbors began replacing secrecy with understanding, and the knowledge that had once caused destruction became a guiding force of credibility and vigilance. Visitors to the garden marveled at its growth, a microcosm of what a community could achieve when nurtured with love and care. Children who once gathered in silence now ran freely, unburdened. Years later, the children who had learned from tales of loss wielded knowledge with grace, passing it on like golden seeds into the future. One crisp evening during the yearly festival, the town was adorned with lanterns reflecting rays of hope. Among the guests, a figure clad in somber clothing arrived, an unfamiliar face that seemed etched into the fabric of sorrow. Dr. Samuel Hawthorne had returned to the town he once claimed as his own, his presence evoking a mix of unease and curiosity. With uncertainty hanging in the air, his approach appeared apprehensive. Charles, now a pillar of the community, stepped forward to greet him, laden with both empathy and wariness. "You are here," he stated, his voice measured yet steady, "but will you acknowledge the pain?" Dr. Hawthorne's gaze faltered, momentarily lost in the echoes of memories mingling with remorse. "I came to seek forgiveness," he murmured, his voice laced with the weight of acceptance. "I squandered my chance to listen, to learn." The crowd held its breath, the symbols etched in the garden seeming to pulse with expectation. Charles stepped aside, allowing the community an opening to respond, ready to embark upon a discussion steeped in the lessons they had learned together. Amidst careful whispers, Ellen's gentle voice broke through the tension, leading the charge into what had once felt lost, a charge toward understanding instead of condemnation. "Forgiveness does not erase what you have done," she replied softly, her compassion radiating warmth, "but it can open a doorway to accountability." The transformation of Dr. Hawthorne was not instantaneous. It was marked by a series of meetings where truths were laid bare, lessons exchanged, and their purpose reaffirmed. The society welcomed him tentatively, allowing him space to share his experiences while in turn demanding sincerity and transparency. As the evening unfolded, under the embrace of friendship mingled with the night's cool air, the ceremony of remembering children bound to their own pasts flickered with newfound potency. Discussions of forgiveness allowed healing. Hawthorne shared his journey, the regrets that haunted him, and the desire to commit his life to understand ethics in medicine. With the town encircling him, they slowly began to read into the character of the man who had once walked a darker path. The commitment toward healing resonated as shared burdens became the ties that anchored them deeper together. As dusk turned to a tranquil twilight, feelings of reconciliation unfolded against the backdrops of lanterns twinkling in remembrance. The night bore witness to a legacy restored, a moment signifying that every grave, both literal and metaphorical, could transform into fertile ground for growth, healing, and opportunity. This bond between tradition and change would forever redefine not only Cherrywood Springs but all who fell beneath its eaves, a symphony of grief woven into joyful triumphs, charting a path forward rich with shared understanding and sacred purpose. And so, as laughter echoed amid the trees and lanterns glowed brighter under the twilight sky, the lesson remained. That pain could be a teacher, guiding without rancor, and forgiveness could reclaim forgotten footprints, allowing the cycle of healing to commence anew. The annual gatherings of Cherrywood Springs continued, each more vibrant than the last, filled with the sounds of children's laughter and the warmth of community. The garden flourished under the care of those who had learned to embrace the lessons dyed with both sorrow and hope. Dr. Hawthorne became a regular presence during these events, his recounting of past transgressions mingling with a newfound humility that began to reshape his identity. The townsfolk listened, not just to the echoes of his failures but to his commitment to ensure that no family would endure what they had faced. He volunteered his knowledge in the garden, even working alongside nurses and educators to champion ethical standards in healthcare. Slowly, trust was mended, and connections rebuilt. Ellen, now a beacon of wisdom and resilience, found joy in the impact of their work, reveling in the children who explored the garden, who picked fresh herbs and learned how to heal with nature rather than fear it. Each blossom symbolized more than growth; it became a voice, a part of the very fabric of their legacy. Over time, Cherrywood Springs attracted visitors from various lands, eager to learn from their journey. Educators, healthcare practitioners, and families seeking insight came with open hearts. The festival evolved into a celebration of life, resilience, and compassion, transcending the boundaries of their town and forging a bond with those who carried similar stories of loss and renewal. Under the gentle sway of twilight, the annual ceremony of remembrance transformed into a time of storytelling, a platform where tales of both past pain and present hope converged. As lanterns illuminated the faces of gathering families, Charles stood beside Ellen, now a community leader in his own right. With confident resolve, he began to share the profound lessons learned, urging every listener to cherish the power that came from unity and understanding. "Together, we have the ability to change the pages of history," he began, his voice steady and clear. "We remember not just to mourn but to ensure through vigilance that the innocence of childhood remains protected." In the serene glow of the garden, stories unfurled, blanketed in a commitment to future generations, to raise spirits filled with knowledge, compassion, and bravery. The children, free from the chains of the past, danced among the flowers under the night sky, unhindered by shadows, their laughter a testament to a legacy reclaimed. In those moments, under the orange and pink hues of dusk, it became clear that the spirit of those lost had transformed. Lives that once flickered dimly now glowed brightly among the living. They lived on in the stories spun and the lives cherished, a perpetual reminder engraved in the soil of Cherrywood Springs, resonating through every heart that dared to remember. As change coursed through the town, it enveloped their hearts, knitting them closer together as they embraced the future, binding the past with threads of enduring hope. And amid the laughter and celebration, it stood evident: while the scars of the journey were real, the strength of a community united could create something far more powerful than loss, a legacy of love, healing, and joy.